Hi, happy Friday. So today we are not artists, we are scientists, and we are going to do an experiment, and I'm very excited. I asked on my Instagram 3 options of videos that you guys would like to see for this week, and the options were to review some mica metallic watercolors, to do a salt test, or to just do a regular painting and do a voiceover time-lapse video like what I usually do. But the votes came in, and most of the votes were for the salt test, which I'm really excited about. I love that idea. So I don't know if I should point it out, but I feel like if I don't point it out, somebody else will. I'm very much looking disheveled today. As you guys know, I've mentioned it a bunch of times, I do have a bunch of chronic illnesses, and this is just one of those times where they're just acting up and giving me a hard time. My body is fighting itself. So that's, the gist of why I look like this. And I'm just leaning into it. Normally, I would have totally canceled this week's video and hid my face and been like, oh no, I can't show myself without makeup on YouTube. But I don't have time for that. I want to be able to make videos on my schedule and when I want, and I want to be able to look forward to it without having to worry about my appearance, because this is an art channel and my face doesn't matter, the art matters. So yeah, we are going to test some salt reactions to my watercolors and my inks and see if different salts and different colors combine and react to each other in different ways. Super fun! I love science, so let's just get to it. I made grid paper, so this is what we're going to be using. There's 5 of them because we are testing 5 different kinds of salts. So this is what I put together. It's just my Strathmore watercolor paper with some painter's tape on it. The squares are not perfect. They are not symmetrical. They're not even, but they will do for what we need because it's just for fun. So we will be testing today my Paul Rubens Artist Grade watercolors. We will not be testing all 24 colors just because I didn't have enough room on the paper, because I wanted big enough swatches for us to really see the salt reactions, and also because some of the colors are a little redundant. So we're not going to be doing all 24, but we will be doing 20 colors. 4 of them have to go. So we used permanent lemon yellow, Indian yellow, cadmium red light. I just realized the sheet I'm looking at is wrong because it lists one of the reds as permanent lemon yellow. Scarlet, madder red, violet, permanent violet, cobalt blue, sky blue, sea blue, Prussian blue, Payne's gray, yellow green, Hooker's green brillite, emerald green deep, yellow ochre, Pazuli red ochre, umber, burnt sienna, and coal black. Those are the colors we used. We'll be using 5 different forms of salt today, but 3 of them are sea salt, which sounds redundant, I know, but hear me out. So we will be using regular coarse sea salt, which is what I usually use when you see me do my paintings. I usually use coarse sea salt that I just take and sprinkle by hand, mixed with table salt. We'll be using regular table salt, which is that finely ground salt, but we'll also be using sea salt ground. I've never tried to see if it makes a difference from me taking it by chunks and sprinkling it versus me like grinding it and seeing if that comes out different than the table salt. So I'm curious about that. And then the third kind of sea salt is that pink Himalayan salt that everybody uses all the time. I use it a lot of times for cooking. I'm just curious to see if the pink sea salt is different than regular sea salt in forms of how it reacts to the paint. It tastes the same in cooking, but I'm just curious. And then we will also be using kosher salt. I've heard actually really good things about kosher salt mixing with watercolors. I have never tried it. I've literally had this box sitting in here forever, and I've never actually used kosher salt because I'm not sure what it does. So today we are gonna find out together, and then maybe I will totally change the way I use salts in my paintings based on these experiments. Oh, and we will also be testing it on my Liquitex acrylic inks. And my reasoning for this is because I've used salt on my black acrylic ink anytime I have done a space painting or my Inktober's. I always mix the salt with the black ink. I know it works. But I've never tried it on the metallics, which I use on pretty much all of my paintings. It just never occurred to me that these might mix with the salts. I don't think they will, but I owe it to myself to try. So we're gonna do that. And then I also wanted to compare how the black ink reacts to the salt versus the black watercolor. That'll be interesting. I kind of know how it's gonna turn out because I've used both of them, but I wanna see like a side-by-side. So I did mention that one of the options for this week's video was to do a mica metallic watercolor review. I do have these that I purchased from Coliro. I'm very excited to use them. I haven't opened the box yet. I've been wanting these for a very long time, but I want to give them their full review separate from this video. So I was originally planning on testing these with the salts as part of this video just to see how metallic watercolors react versus regular watercolors. But I think, first off, because I haven't used them yet, I don't want to open them just to use them for salt. I want to paint with them, and I can't paint tonight. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of combine these two videos, and I will do a salt test when I do the full review of these Coliro watercolors. So if you want to see how these react to salt, that will probably be next week's video. Will be a full review of these. I'm going to paint with them. We're going to swatch them. We're going to just see how they work, and then we are going to test their reaction to the salts. So that'll be fun. So if you are looking forward to that, I promise I won't make you wait. It'll be next week's video. So yes, so if you're looking forward to other videos, they will be happening soon. Let's get started. So what I am theorizing, what I think will happen, my predictions are based on my use of the salt. I don't think the acrylic inks, the metallics, I don't think that they are going to react in any way special with the salt. If they do, I'll be pleasantly surprised, and I'll definitely find a way to incorporate that. But I just don't have the feeling that they're gonna react in an interesting enough way with the salts. I also don't think that the coarse sea salt versus the coarse pink sea salt is gonna be that much different. I'm just curious. I really don't think it's gonna make a difference though. As far as the colors go, I know that the reds and the blues and the purples are going to react very nicely with the salts. I'm curious to see how it goes with the different levels of the salt that we use, but I know from experience that those colors really react nicely with the salt. So I'm curious to see about the yellows and the greens. I kind of feel like it's not going to be that exciting, but we will see. Also the browns. I know nothing about mixing browns with salt, so we'll see. And I'm curious to see what the big deal about kosher salt is. So, all right, here we go. Science time. I have to clear off my desk and make room. All right, so just for spatial reasons, I can only do one at a time. Also, that way I can just kind of keep track of what I'm doing and not get anything mixed up. So, first things first, we will write on the back which kind of salt this is, and we will be starting with the regular fine table salt because I don't like the container I have it in, and it's very rusty. The cap is hard to remove at this point. I'm gonna have to move them into a new container, so I just want to get those out of the way, so that way I don't have to use that anymore. All right, table salt. So now we know, just in case we forget. And here is our salt. So we're gonna do them one at a time. We're gonna do color salt, color salt, color salt, and so on. For watercolors, especially when you wanna do something like this, you always want to spray them first to activate them and give them time to become pigmented and easy to use. So we will spray those. Because we have a wet brush and the wet paint, I'm going to opt to not wet the paper. But I am only going to do, oh my god, I'm making a mess. Darker on the ends. I should have totally taped the whole thing. Oh my god. All right, we will do a lot of color here and let it kind of fade out towards there. And our salt. That is a lot of salt. That's the thing about the table salt, is it just goes. Salt. And you want to sprinkle the salt on while the paint is still wet. This will be fun as I'm going because table salt reacts very quickly, especially in the more pigmented colors. So you can kind of already see as it's drying, you can see the patterns. I think this red right here is going to give us the best color reaction. All right, I can already tell that one, look at, it's already going, same as this one here. You can already see such a nice reaction. All right, and now we will put these somewhere safe so that they can dry and do their salty thing. Let's do coarse sea salt. And this is the sea salt that you primarily see in all of my paintings. I'm going to use it right out of my little jar that I use. All right, same thing. Let's go. And this is another one of those that if the paint isn't wet enough, if I don't put it down right at the exact moment that there's really a lot of water, it doesn't react well. So I think for a test like this, we're gonna get some interesting results. Because I'm not really giving the paper a ton of water to work with, and some of these paints do dry fairly quickly. And I want to make sure to get salt in the light and dark parts so we can see how it reacts. Just to if there's more pigment or if there's less pigment, or you know, how much paint is on the paper, etc., etc. Oh, the purple immediately. I don't know if you guys can see that. It just loved the purple. I have a suspicion that it's going to love the blue too, but let's see. Let's get a little bit more color up here. All right. Yeah, there it goes. Immediately loves the blue. All right, so kind of similar results so far, but we are going to wait to pass judgment until we've done all of the salts and everything is dried and scraped off. All right. Oh my God. Well, just off the bat, I broke the thing for the kosher salt. Should we pour it and sprinkle it? What does this stuff look like? Oh my God. Oh. Yeah, we're gonna do it this way. How old is this? I got this salt from my grandmother, if I'm being honest, so it could be super old. I like the way it looks though. Let's see if super old kosher salt still does the trick. I'm still really not expecting it to. Oh, I like the shape of it. That's interesting. Oh, I think that's gonna look interesting already, which is something because that color hasn't reacted to any of the other salts really so far. All right, so it's been a couple of days. I let all of the salts sit overnight and really give them a chance to do anything that they were going to do, and let them fully dry. And the results are actually kind of surprising. Some is surprising, some isn't. But let's take a peek. Started with the regular table salt. Here we go. Regular table salt. And I would say this wasn't super surprising for me because this is a salt that I use for pretty much all of my paintings. I like the way it just sits nice and fine. It kind of just soaks right into the paint. So you really don't have to scrape it off too much because it's pretty much in there once it's in there because it's so fine. Like I said, the reds, the purples, and the blues reacted really nicely. I knew they were going to. I will say throughout this whole thing, the yellows and kind of the orange, really a letdown. They gave me pretty much nothing for every single one of the salts for the most part, and that was kind of disappointing. But for this one, I will say the Indian yellow really did actually react more than the permanent lemon yellow. The permanent lemon yellow was just a dud, completely. But the Indian yellow at least gave me something with the table salt. Yellow green, very reactive, way more reactive than I anticipated. The sea blue really actually didn't do anything, which I find strange because pretty much all the other blues reacted. So I don't know why the sea blue didn't react. And the browns actually gave me a pretty good reaction. I have learned that I do not like, which color is this? Pazuli. I don't like it. It's a really frustrating color to work with. It's frustrating. So that one didn't really react with the salt. And the burnt sienna didn't react too nicely either, but the other ones did. the coarse sea salt, and that was the one that I grabbed and sprinkled. We got a little bit more from the lemon yellow on this one, but really not much. We got actually less from the Indian yellow. This one, totally different set of patterns from the table salt, which is interesting. I always like to see which salts create which kind of patterns on which kind of colors, because then I can kind of know if I'm really planning out a piece, I can kind of decide based on the salt reaction if it's something that I'm going to put salt in. Sometimes I do just like to sprinkle them and let them do their thing and then get surprised, but there are some times where you kind of do have a little bit of a vision that you want to go with. But this one actually, yeah, it was really surprising for me because some were really reactive and then some that I thought were going to be weren't. So as you can see, the patterns are really kind of all over the place. Like with the reds and the orange, you really see more of the outline of where the salt sat. And then with like the blues, you see more of that spread of where the salt pushed the color away. So two very different reactions, which is interesting. I didn't realize it was going to do that. I kind of thought we were going to see the same patterns all over. I will say, so far the most reactive would be cobalt blue. And I think that's pretty much the same. Yeah, the most reactive colors are cobalt blue, Prussian blue, and Payne's gray. And that was kind of the same with the table salt too. And I think that's pretty consistent with all of the salts, that those three were our most reactive colors, which is good to know. I barely ever use Payne's gray, and I don't know why. I really need to start using that for like all of my paintings because I love it. And seeing that it reacts really nicely with the salt just made me love it even more. Then we did our ground sea salt. So this one, I kind of wanted to see how it compared to the coarse sea salt and the table salt, because it kind of in my head was a combination of the two, because it's finely ground like the table salt, but it's the same salt as the sea salt. And it was really surprising. I wanted to see if it gave me that better consistency or better patterns than the table salt, because I really don't enjoy using the table salt as much. I use it for all of my paintings, but it's not a pleasant experience for me because it just is that little salt that I have to pinch and sprinkle and it gets everywhere, and using a grinder I think is a lot easier. And so if it gave me the same kind of look, then I could totally retire the table salt and switch over to ground sea salt. Let me pull out the table salt really quickly and take a peek. Let's see how they hold up next to each other. I would say they're pretty similar, but I think the ground sea salt definitely kind of gave us more to work with. The patterns are much more interesting, and so I think I'm definitely going to take that into consideration going forward. The only thing is the black, the coal black, we got more of a reaction with the table salt than with the ground sea salt. So I actually think I might keep these little experiment sheets as kind of a cheat sheet so I can look and see which colors react which way and make my decisions based on that. So I'm not ready to completely retire the table salts, but I definitely think I'm going to switch over to ground sea salt more. But yeah, I would say this one so far is my favorite reaction sheet. I just really like the patterns that we got here. It's a little lacking in some of the areas, but overall I would say this is a good jump from the table salt, depending on the color. Next, the one I was most curious about was the Himalayan pink salt, and I was calling it sea salt in the beginning of this video, and then I realized it's a rock salt, which is very cool. I didn't even realize that it was a rock salt until I opened it and I realized, oh yeah, this is absolutely a rock salt, which is kind of a totally different wheelhouse. But yeah, so I started off, as you saw in the video, grinding it because it came in a grinder, but then I saw that it really wasn't giving me too much, and so I wanted to do a comparison of I ground it and then sprinkled some of the actual bits of rock salt onto the color. So I wanted to see both reactions and kind of get a comparison that way. So we did a little bit more with this, and it's interesting is the best word that I can use for it. I don't think that I will ever use this in a painting. I think there's much better alternatives, but it was interesting to see just for curiosity's sake. So some of the colors we really got where the chunks sat. By the way, it barely dissolved. Most of the time when I use the salt, as it's drying, it's also dissolving into the color, and that's how it kind of soaks up some of the color or pushes away some of the color, just depending on how it reacts. This one, they were just such big chunks, and I didn't use a lot of water. I wanted to use more of the paint in the pigment than the water. So the rock salt or the pink salt just sat right on them. And so then when I actually like scraped it off, a lot of the salt still had like the color kind of soaked into it a little bit. And I've seen that with my coarse sea salt. Some of it will sometimes soak in the color of what you placed it on. I like to save the salt when it does that, because then, I don't know, you get more interesting reactions when you sprinkle used salt onto another painting, and then you kind of get a little bit of mix of color in there. I'm sure there are some people that don't like that, but I think it's interesting. And so the Himalayan salt did that, and I did save it. I actually saved all of it into a little bowl, and you can see some of the mix of colors in there. So I mean, I will use those again at some point because it's a waste. I'm not going to throw them out. I've already tainted them with paint. They've already soaked it up. They're toxic now. So I'm going to use them in another form of painting at some point. But yeah, so some of the colors reacted to it ground. Some of it reacted to the chunks. The Payne's Gray, very reactive. But some of them you can't really even see that it was like chunky. I don't know, it just didn't give me enough that made it really worth anything. And then the kosher salt, which I was trying to remember where I heard that it's really good. I really cannot remember where I heard that you should use kosher salt on watercolor paints. I don't know. But yeah, so like I had said, my kosher salt was old. So I don't know how accurate this experiment was for the kosher salt. I can't say if I really did it justice because it was an old box of salt. But right off the bat, I couldn't get it off of the paper. For whatever reason, it's really on there. It's really on the paint, and I couldn't. I tried to scrape it. I actually like stood over the trash can with a spatula and scraped at it, and I couldn't get it off. So I don't know if that's because it's old. I have to imagine so, because I feel like I would have never heard, oh, use kosher salt on watercolor paintings if it stayed like this. So I think that's got to be an issue with my salt specifically. So take this with a grain of salt, because I don't know how accurate it is. I didn't mean to make that pun. It just happened. But yeah, literally take it with a grain of salt. Okay. So again, yellows gave me nothing. We got a little bit more in with the reds and the purples, but it's hard to tell again because the salt, especially right here, the salt would not come off of the paper. So it's hard to even see any patterns. Payne's Gray, the blues, super reactive. Same as the browns and the black, but it really didn't give me anything that made me go, oh, this is my salt. This is what I'm going to use from now on. I think sea salt is really just the way to go for me. But I don't know. Maybe someday in the future I will buy a better box of kosher salt and see if it is any different. But when I first sprinkled it on, it was immediately reactive, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I can totally see where this is going. And then as it dried, it just gave me nothing. So it was a really good initial reaction, and then nothing afterwards. So I don't know. And then lastly, we did our ink test. Nice and shiny. So as I suspected, the inks did nothing. Well, not nothing, but not anything worthwhile. So black ink, actually I was very surprised that the black ink didn't react too much with the salt, because I've used the black ink. And so I think the difference between when I'm painting with it versus this test, I didn't use a lot of water. I think mixing the ink with water is really what makes the difference in how it reacts with the salt. So we didn't get too much of a reaction pretty much with anything, even the table salt and the sea salt, which I've used before. So I know that it can react, but I think it's the difference between pure ink and ink mixed with water. And then with the silver and the gold, I mean, they're both pretty much the same. We really didn't get anything except for a little bit on the coarse sea salt, the kosher salts, and the pink Himalayan salt. Those did give us some patterns. But not anything that's worth using. I did find it interesting that because I was reusing the pink salt like I said I would, there was some color transfer. I think that looks really interesting, that there is some black and pink and blue mixed into the silver and gold, but it's just not interesting enough that makes me go, oh, I'm going to use this in the future. So I am curious though. I'm going to save this sheet and I'm going to compare it to when I do the full Coliro metallic watercolor review, because I do want to see how metallic watercolors react to salt versus my metallic inks. This made me hopeful that those do something, because that would be really interesting to see in a painting. But yeah, so those are our salt results. Those are our results. I like that. Let me know if any of this was surprising. Did you find this to be an extensive and accurate test? Have you used any of these salts and gotten different reactions and results just from your own painting process? I would love to know more about the kosher salt situation. If you use kosher salt and you are getting a totally different scenario than what my salt did, please let me know, because I will go buy better salt if that's the case. And which of these reactions did you find the most surprising? Did you have any guesses ahead of time that were proven wrong? Did you kind of already know where this was going? I would just love to hear a response to this video. And if you like videos like this, give me more things to test. Let's be sciencey. I love it. I would love to experiment more with different mediums and just kind of see what things we can play around with and learn from, because art should be fun, and these are this is one of the fun parts of when I'm making a painting. I love messing with salt and color and seeing just what I can create. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other things that you would like to see me do, please leave a comment below. And thank you for joining me for another video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week with that watercolor review.